Akufo Addo, you are the chair of a group of countries that are massively impacted by climate change. You have chosen to stand up and react, as we said, by mobilizing the international community around your Accra to Marrakesh agenda, but also by working with donor countries, such as Germany and France, to co-construct innovative insurance mechanisms against climate risk. Could you please share with us your vision?
Thank you very much, and I'm grateful for being made a part of this important panel. My understanding is that innovation is not merely about new technologies or instruments, but it's also about how we can respond creatively to new challenges and forge new approaches for development. It's obvious the damage that the pandemic, the conflict in Europe, in the Ukraine, have done to our economies and societies in Africa. It's also obvious what the monetary tightening policy, which has been led by the US Federal Reserve Bank, has also done to our productive capacities and capabilities on the continent. So there are some obvious solutions that we are enjoined to take. The first is ourselves, improving our capacity for self-reliance. And that can only happen if we improve radically our own domestic resource mobilization, i.e., how we can strengthen our tax systems in such a way that we can have the resources increasingly internally to invest in our education, to invest in our health system, to invest in our infrastructure. And in so doing, to create a situation of cooperation at the regional level, between tax agencies at the regional level, that would allow us also to put a halt to the significant, I say more, significant is not a good enough word, to the huge resources of our continent that are taken away through illicit means. We've had figures that have been given to us by Thabo Mbeki and the committee that he established. We're talking about 88, 89, $90 billion worth of resources a year. If we have a situation where the cooperation between improved and empowered tax agencies work, we can make sure that as much of those resources are retained within the continent as possible to increase our self-reliance. And then secondly, we're talking about reinventing new instruments. Mia, in her presentation, has talked about some. Debt for climate swaps, debt for education swaps. These are instruments that have an obvious benefit for both us and for those who are our creditors. And for us, it is giving us more fiscal space, and therefore improving again our capacity to do things for ourselves, and at the same time, making it possible for us to have relations with our creditors that are not either aggressive or offensive. They will get paid, but they get paid by making it possible for us to invest in our own climate actions, which can only improve the stability of our countries and our economies, and making it possible for us to grow those economies. And in that process, of course, people will get paid. The third important aspect of this is also encouraging regional cooperation. We have a plethora of multinational, regional institutions African Development Bank, the West African Development Bank, the various regional economic communities, Afro-Exim Bank, which has just held its 30th anniversary celebrations in Accra. The coordination amongst these institutions is not the best, and we need to encourage them to work together in a more effective and systematic manner. It cannot be that global multinational organizations, IMF, World Bank, find it relatively easy to cooperate and work together, but Afro-Exim Bank and African Development Bank are not able to do so. They should be able to do so, and we have to insist on them being able to do so, because in cooperating and coordinating their activities, inevitably more money will be made available for us to use in this big struggle against the climate emergency. So these are some of the broad areas of concentration that we have to. Obviously, there are other matters, Mia mentioned them, which we're having to raise global attention to, the intervention of the rating agencies in our development. Not so long ago, barely 18 months ago, Ghana was the darling boy of the bond markets in the capital market. Suddenly, as a result of rating downgrades that were taken, became shut out of the capital markets. And this has been done by people for whom there's very little accountability. Nobody's able to hold their feet to the fire and find out exactly what is it that motivates them, what are the basis upon which these rating agencies work. We need to be able also to focus on that. But I think that above all, the forward thing is making sure that we ourselves, especially on the African continent, are in a stronger and better place to determine our own future. We have seen that the dependence on foreign capital is both costly and risky. It's not in our control, and it means that at any stage, the rug can be pulled from under our feet. We've seen it recently. We saw it over the pandemic struggle when suddenly it became impossible for us to have access to vaccines. Fortunately, the response of some of us on the continent has been to create our own technology for making vaccines ourselves. And I think that obviously is one very positive outcome of the pandemic, which we need to develop. But I am extremely focused on the measures that we can do to improve our own self-reliance and reduce as much as possible. It's impossible because we are all on one planet, we live in one globe, but to reduce as much as possible our dependence on outside sources to finance our development. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.